Zion, that's the beloved community, right? Like
Yeah.
if we were to look at it from a church context where everyone is invited, where there's a sense of belonging, where you want everyone to be part of the of this community, and we accept all people as they are. We accept differences. We acknowledge that they go through struggles, but then we help them overcome their struggles by inviting them into our community, where we strive to make them feel welcome. So if
Yeah.
we were to invite someone into, the ward, or to invite them into our home, making sure that there's a sense of belonging, and we only can do that when we know that when we acknowledge that we're all children of God, and we want to establish Zion here on earth by being peacemakers, right? And so
Yeah.
we don't, you don't look at people just because of their different affiliations. Maybe they're a member of the church, maybe they're not, but you still make them feel welcome.
Welcome back to the Leading Saints podcast. Today we chat with Ernest Davis, who is a success story in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A phenomenal story, a Black Latter-day Saint from Los Angeles, California, who was led to the church in a really unique way at the University of Idaho, playing football up there, and after a knee injury, that thrust him onto the covenant path in a very unique way. So he tells a little bit of that story. And he's also a leadership guy. He earned a doctorate in philosophy of leadership from Gonzaga University. So this guy knows his stuff. And he wrote a book called Leading in the Lord's Way. It goes over 10 principles, talking about these and instructing about these in the LDS context that you definitely need to check out in this book. And we talk about them in this episode as well. So you're going to love his story. You're going to love his book. And I should mention that we recorded this over at the Leading Saints Zion Lab, which is our online community where all the things are happening in the world of Leading Saints. And so there's a live studio audience that he and I refer to from time to time. And if you want to join in on some of these live recordings, definitely go over to leadingsaints.org/Zion and participate in the Zion Lab. It's awesome. So here's my interview with Ernest Davis. Okay. All right, Ernest, you wrote the book, Leading in the Lord's Way, and maybe tell us what led up to this point where you thought, I'm going to write a book about this stuff.
When I was kind of reading the Joseph Smith history, there was a certain chapter that said that the prophets and apostles had learned to lead in the Lord's way, and so I was inspired at that time to write a book that talked about leadership in that aspect. And then at the same time, I was starting a doctoral program and I was studying servant leadership. And so I decided to kind of intertwine what I had learned with my testimony, as well as some of the teachings from the gospel and then different aspects of leadership.
Awesome. Love it. Now, your journey, there was probably a point in your life you didn't expect to be at the position you're at, and you joined the church in your early 20s, if I remember right. Maybe where does that story begin? What should we understand about your early upbringing?
When I was in late high school and junior college, me and my twin brother, Eric, he's actually on this call as well.
Oh, nice.
We had found ourselves homeless, and so we were attending LA Southwest Community College. We were staying at different hotels from week to week. And so then we were playing sports, playing football, and then we strived to get a scholarship and then to improve our life situation. And so I talk a lot about that in the book, about how we had people who helped us overcome our barriers. And then different aspects of our lives, he was leading, and then I was serving, or he was serving me, and then I was following. We were kind of switching the role between leader and follower, and then helping each other, to survive the streets of Los Angeles, spending a lot of time together. It was just he and I and our mom. We went. And then we finally got an athletic scholarship to the University of Idaho. And then from there is where I was able to be baptized once I had a career-ending knee surgery.
Oh, wow. And so what was the story? Like, how did you come in contact with the missionaries, or how did they introduce you, or who?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. I had met missionaries before in Los Angeles. I had got suspended from school once in the 10th grade, and I had met some missionaries at the park. My mom had told me to go to the park for the entire day until school was over. And so when I was leaving the park that day, they had gave me a Book of Mormon, and I had read it. And then I just kind of thought that I didn't realize that there was another testament of Jesus Christ. And so I read that and kind of didn't think nothing of it. I actually got halfway through it and stopped. I had prayed to know if the Book of Mormon was true, but I didn't get an immediate answer at that time, right? And I think a couple of years after that is when we had end up being homeless, not having a place over our head. And so after that, I met missionaries in college when I had career-ending knee surgery. They would come visit me. My wife now, she had read the scriptures with me. She's a member of the church. She was born and raised. And so once I had injured my knee, she was the one that kind of took me through the steps of how I could get baptized and kind of showing me the love that I didn't feel at that time. When I blew up my knee, I was very depressed because I was, my only identity was that of an athlete. And then coming from Los Angeles, football had been my only means of like separating myself from my struggles. And so when it happened to me, it was a very dark place for me, but she helped me find a way out. And then that's when I found the covenant path and got baptized and starting to strengthen my testimony.
That's awesome. And so when you were at University of Idaho, was the leadership path the plan then, or was it all like maybe the NFL? Did you have a backup plan?
I think it was NL, so to speak. You think that, every inner city athlete aspires to go to the NFL. And I think for me, I was learning leadership without knowing it. I think Eric and I both became leaders. We had to lead ourselves first. And we learned different leadership characteristics, like I talk about in my book, whether it be listening, empathy, or being able to solve problems, right? I think leadership is learned from the struggles that you overcome. And so for me, it wasn't really about leadership at that time until I realized at this point in my life that I was practicing leadership characteristics. And we had people in our lives that helped us overcome those things, like our coach, Henry Washington at LA Southwest. He had helped us overcome a lot of barriers. And so for me, it was really leadership is about removing barriers from people so that they can grow us to their fullest potential.
Yeah. What was it about that coach? I mean, was there a certain approach he took to help you through those things, or?
Well, he had so Eric was on the phone one day and he was talking to a hotel manager, asking or pleading for one more night stay in the hotel. And he had said that he had heard us over talking, and then it really rocked him to the core where he wanted to offer us a plan to improve our situation. So he sat Eric and I down. He gave us a plan, a process of how we can improve ourselves, taking as many classes a semester, maximizing our opportunity, like taking many classes as we could each semester, going to football practice. He provided us with jobs. And then he also provided us with financial aid, all the different resources that we needed to be successful. And then from that point, we just followed his process. And we graduated within a year and a half. And then we were able to, leave Los Angeles to go to the University of Idaho. One cool thing about Coach Washington, I still talk to him to this day. And one of the things he had told me about the story of how he had got a master's before a master's degree before he became the athletic director at LA Southwest. And he said that the BYU had offered a master's program, and they would send professors out to inner city Los Angeles and teach them at the local chapels every 2 weeks. And that was in the 1980s or late 70s. And so you kind of think of that aspect where BYU was able to offer him a path, right? So he was able to get education. After that, he became a coach. And then from there, he ended up touching Eric and I's lives in ways that we didn't expect.
Wow.
And that's the whole servant leadership aspect where, the church went out of their way not to be acclaimed for it or to be notarized for it, but they offered like education opportunities from people in inner city Los Angeles. And then, what did Coach Washington do with that opportunity? He helped other disadvantaged young Black men in his community.
Man, that influence just it's like that domino effect, right? And so where he was just happened to be standing in the hotel and heard that conversation. That's how you connected.
No, actually, we were staying outside of his office. He had a window that was open to the outside, and so we were standing there. And it was, I think, either after practice or before practice, and he heard us over talking. And he still remembers that day up until now, and how he felt so bad for us, and he wanted to help us.
Yeah. And then that began your journey to Idaho to play football there?
Yeah, we just continued the process. I mean, our nose was in the books or on the field. We were on the grind, so to speak. We didn't let anything stop us. We had to maintain a certain lifestyle, even just because we didn't have the resources to, go out and do all the different things that maybe some youth may do. So we just stuck to the discipline of it all and just strive to improve our life situation.
Yeah. And then, is there anything else about your upbringing or early life that we should put into context?
I had an older brother who played professional football for a time. He was a big influence for Eric and I. He taught us how to play football, how to use different techniques, and just being able to develop that resilience. A chapter in my book, I call it the talented 10th, where, you provide certain individuals those opportunities, and that is enough for us to uplift entire communities, where you provide a path for others to follow, whether it's me and Eric or someone else. When you see someone from your community or from your the struggles that you may encounter achieve success, you're able to visualize it for yourself. So that's kind of one of the biggest things for us when we were growing up is we had Chris as a model of how we could learn the different techniques in football. We had Coach Washington who provided us a path, and that's the whole ideal of servant leadership, is to provide that path for others.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just curious with the focus with servant leadership with marginalized communities. Is that your focus in your studies or just in general with your life experience?
I think it's in general my life experiences. I work I work at Skills Inc., so it's a nonprofit organization in Auburn, Washington, and so we employ persons with disabilities, and then just trying to uplift people who don't traditionally get those opportunities, like underrepresented groups, trying to inspire change in those communities, because it's hard for someone to learn the gospel or learn leadership or learn how to follow someone towards a righteous path when their ribs are touching or when they lack all the necessary resources to be successful, right? I mean, think about it. If you have a choice between going to church or going out to the streets and hustling or doing whatever it is to survive, you're going to worry about surviving first. And so it's really about what can we do as leaders within the church or outside of the church to help people look past their barriers or overcome their barriers so that they can find, whether it's the teachings of Jesus Christ or education opportunities, leadership opportunities, because those opportunities help represent not only just one particular group, but the diversity of the beloved community that I talk about. Like, Heavenly Father loves all of us as his children, and it should look diverse, and we should support one another as if it is that.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, like from a church leadership standpoint, any advice on how we can focus on the least of these, these marginalized groups, or help facilitate that so they actually have, they actually can start the journey in the gospel or continue in the gospel?
Yeah, I think as representation is really important. Like, obviously, if you have more diversity in leadership, you're able to reach out to those individuals. And not just diversity in regards to race. I think a lot of times we racialize things. I think diversity in our upbringing, our way of thinking, and then trying to reach out to those and look at different ways that you can help someone, right? And I think the church as a whole is doing a lot of different programs that help marginalized communities. That's why you see a lot of the church growth outside the U.S. in places like Africa or Latin America, all these different places outside of our country where, you have programs like Succeed in School, the BYU Pathway Program, all these different programs that the church offers. Not only do they share the gospel, but they remove the barriers that prevent someone from hearing the message. And that's the key aspect of leadership is what can I share? What message can I share with this individual, whether as a leader or as a follower of Christ? What message can I share with that individual that will help them overcome their barriers and show them that God loves them?
Yeah. And I'm just curious if I love the focus on, diversity. And again, not just racial diversity, but just maybe economic diversity or someone with a similar background that maybe understands those resources. If they're, if they're struggling to maybe find that diversity Is it a matter of like reaching out to some of these programs in the community, or is that maybe a good place to start?
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start. When you reach out to those different programs within the community, you'll see that the leadership within the church changes. It's more diverse. Like if you were to go and look at missionary presidents or managers for, different areas in the Africa, they're going to be a representation of that community. And I think, as we continue to not just look within our wards, our states, we'll see that the leadership in the church is diverse. And then we shouldn't look at it from what we think diversity is. It's like you said, the socioeconomic aspect, um, you know, from state to state, like the culture, the Latter-day Saint culture in Washington may be a little different from the Latter-day Saint culture in Utah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then, just trying to navigate those different communities and understand that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the same, no matter where you go in the world. And then trying to look past the cultural barriers or, what I would call prejudices that we have towards different aspects of, different groups or, upbringings.
Yeah. Anybody else in your story that stands out, like Coach Washington or your wife or anybody else?
I have so many people. I mean, we all have our Coach Washingtons, right? I mean, those people who believed in us. So I wouldn't say that there's a certain person. I think there's an idea of what I look to. Like I have people at work, my boss or my the chief operating director at my job. He's a very good mentor of mine. His name is Charlie Frampton. Um, I have Ruth. I have all of Ruth's family. I didn't have very many male role models in my life, so for me to have her family to kind of show me what the priesthood looks like, her father. I mean, there's so many different examples of people who helped me see the potential within myself, and then allowed me the opportunities to reach it.
Yeah. And it sounds like, great influences in lives, is crucial, especially maybe for troubled teens or those, in tough spots of life. Any other advice you give to wards or parents who are worried about their teenagers or their YSA members?
I think if you're a parent or a coach, anyone in a leadership position, I mean, leadership is very diverse. I think it's when you're leading and you're a parent or you're a coach, I think you would want to meet that person where they're at. So you identify where they're at and not to judge them, but to just try to see what they need in their lives to help them reach their potential and to help them understand that they already have potential. It's not for them to feel like they need to earn it or to have someone give it to them. It's just providing them the right opportunity that's unique to them. I mean, so many times we expect people to get somewhere and we don't meet them where they're at. Coach Washington met us where where we were at. Ruth met us where we were at. My brother and I, and like we continue to overcome those barriers when someone can come to our position, to our perspective, and see what they look like, and then say, "Hey, I know that's a struggle for you. What can I do to help you? How can I help?" Right, from a place of empathy, not from a place of judgment or to get anything out of it.
Yeah. Is there any other examples as far as like servant leadership that we should consider as church leaders? Either principles or parts of your story.
So the different principles is 10 characteristics that we can develop to be more servant leading. It's listening, awareness, foresight, persuasion, and then stewardship, trying to help with the growth of people, empathy, healing, and then conceptualization, and then establishing the beloved community. And it all begins with a place of love, right? I think if we understand that we love all children of God, and then understanding that there's no difference when that message is the same. For me, like if I'm looking at servant leadership, I look at historical leaders. One of the things that really resonated with me is Dr. King or Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, some of the historical servant leaders. They had the same message as some of our church leaders, our prophets and apostles, and it was the same message of love, right? And to not just be a leader from a title, from a dictatorship, but leading in a way where we follow the teachings of Christ and we lead as Christ did, not from a place of authority, but from a place of action and a place of love.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many opportunities. Some of those characters, there were so many opportunities for them to go to war, right, and to fight back or push back. But in reality, they responded with love, and that really furthered their mission farther than any war or violence could have done.
Yeah, and I talk about the prophet Joseph Smith and his experience with Zion's camp in the book as well. They were being persecuted, and they were traveling, and one of the things that Joseph Smith did is he ministered to those who were in pain or who were injured along the trip, right? So instead of trying to tell people what to do or focusing on the trials that they were facing, he chose to serve. And that's where that whole concept is. The account says that they had learned to lead in the Lord's way when he was ministering to them, offering them priesthood blessings, helping them not be kind of oppositional towards one another when things got hard, because they faced a lot of adversity. And so for him to focus on those Christ-like characteristics, to lead in a way where he was ministering, grabbing anyone who was willing to follow and to lead them on the covenant path was pretty cool.
Yeah. And you mentioned those 10 principles as far as like servant leadership. Did you go over each one of those in the book?
Yes, I go over it and I kind of interweave it with the life experience. So I kind of jump around with my life story and I apply different things that I encountered growing up or some of the experiences that I had to each characteristic.
Awesome. And are there a handful, 2 or 3 that you'd want to focus on just to give us a taste in a church leadership context?
I would say stewardship, the beloved community, and empathy.
Love it. Where would we start with stewardship?
Stewardship is, we have talents, and then we have people within our ward or our stakes that we are stewards over. And so, making sure that we grow our talents in a certain way. I was at a leadership or a priesthood meeting yesterday. Some people, maybe they invite more people to church, or they may hand out the Book of Mormon, and then maybe me, I write a book, or, some people are really good at speaking, and you're, blessed with these opportunities based off the talents that you have to share a message. And it doesn't matter if it's a prominent position where you make a lot of money, or if it's a humble position, just being able to utilize your talents and growing them, kind of like me being on this podcast or me continuing to write. What can I do with my talents to develop them in a way where I can share a message or share Christ's message? So for me, it could be that, or, if we're over a ward or a stake, how are we cultivating the talents within the different offices, whether it be the youth or the Relief Society, within the priesthood, how can we cultivate those individuals that we steward over?
Yeah. And I love that, because you could have written all sorts of leadership books, especially in your journey with graduate work and leadership, but you wrote a book for the church or for Latter-day Saints, right? And that's not that, you can write all sorts of books in the future as well, but it's a great way to give back and to recognize your stewardship.
Yeah. In my book, I share a message from my Ruth's grandfather, where he was from the island of Samoa, Western Samoa. And he was a stake president, and he would travel from stake or ward to ward when he gave his speeches, because he would have to talk at different wards. And so what he would do is he would walk to each village to give a talk. And before he would leave, or before he would give his presentation or his talk, he would meticulously fold his clothes and put them into his bag so that they wouldn't get overly sweaty, right? And then being able to travel to each village and share a message, and then teaching that to his children. Or he had a store where he would invite some of the youth from the surrounding villages, invite them to his home, treat them as if they were his children. So for me, that was like a good example of stewardship. where you're really taking into account your calling, right? Or, the responsibility to go teach or speak, where, he took the time to walk to each village at that time and to really want to represent the Lord in a certain way. And then also inviting everyone in his, in the surrounding villages who needed food or needed a place to stay into his home.
Yeah, love that. Anything else with stewardship that needs to be mentioned?
I think just continuing to understand the gifts that we have and not to bury them in the ground, but to continue to cultivate them in a way that brings light to someone else.
Yeah. So tell me about beloved community.
If you were to think about Zion, that's the beloved community, right? Like
Yeah.
if we were to look at it from a church context where everyone is invited, where there's a sense of belonging, where you want everyone to be part of this community, and we accept all people as they are. We accept differences. We acknowledge that they go through struggles, but then we help them overcome their struggles by inviting them into our community, where we strive to make them feel welcome. So if we were to invite someone into, the ward, or, to invite them into our home, making sure that there's a sense of belonging. And we only can do that when we know that, when we acknowledge that we're all children of God, and we want to establish Zion here on earth by being peacemakers, right? And so we don't, you don't look at people just because of their different affiliations. Maybe they're a member of the church, maybe they're not, but you still make them feel welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, just the community part, that we're not so much a church as we are a community, or a Zion community.
Yeah, I agree.
Hopefully everybody feels that as they engage with the church. So.
Yeah, when I first began going to church, I didn't have all the church clothes and stuff. I had met Ruth, and so I didn't have a suit or anything like that. But when I would go, I would have just a t-shirt on. It was my best dressed at the time, So
Yeah.
but for me to go into a place and feel welcome is really important, right? And so it helped me keep going to church, right? Or even for Ruth, she would tie a tie for me because I didn't know how to tie a tie, so she would tie it around her neck and then give it to me, right? So kind of making me feel like I belong when I did get the opportunity to have that tie or the shirt that I needed to feel more comfortable in church.
Yeah, love that. All right, tell me about empathy.
Empathy, that's one of my favorites because you want to understand people's perspective. I share in my book about when I was at LA Southwest, I had met a young man. He was in one of my math classes, and he was from the local Crip gang. And he had came in there, he was all beat up, and he had so much potential because he actually knew all the answers to a lot of the questions, but because he had certain barriers, he didn't obviously make it as far as I did. But when you kind of take a step back and put yourself in the shoes of others, you begin to understand their story. Instead of judging, maybe you can take the time to walk in their shoes, right? Walk in his blue Chuck Taylor, so to speak. And if you were to walk in his blue Chuck Taylors and understand some of the barriers that he encountered, would you still judge him the same way? What would be the answers to some of the problems that he had? Like what would be your choice if you had that kind of scenario? Like if we're in leadership positions, whether it's in the church or outside the church, having the empathy to understand someone's struggles and look at it from a perspective of what are they going through and how can I help them? How can I feel that same emotion that they feel? Similar to Jesus Christ, right? He helped the least of these throughout his ministry. He would meet them where they're at, and he would offer a place of. He would always be empathetic towards the one, right?
Yeah. And definitely in this effort, as we reach out to minority communities or minority, the atypical person in our community, we're going to need a lot of empathy because most likely we won't relate specifically to their story, right?
Yeah. And I think the only way we can relate to someone's story is through empathy. It's kind of like the adulterous woman. Everyone was judging her, and then Christ came, and he came from a place of empathy. and he placed a crown on her head before she knew it was on top of it, and allowed her to grow into it, right? By showing her the empathy and the forgiveness that she needed. And what if we were to do the same? Like, despite someone's past history or despite the struggles that they endured, what if we were to come from a place of empathy and place a crown on their head by the way we treat them, by the way we lead, and the way that we interact with them? Then they would eventually find the covenant path, whether it's now or in a future time. It's important for us to just be able to be empathetic, right? I mean, and listen, and to just help someone, love someone, and like similar to how Christ did.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ernest, any other point, principle, concept that we need to make sure we include?
No, I think diversity and sharing our testimonies. This book was an opportunity for me to share my testimony. That's obviously very unique, but then different from your typical, church or Latter-day Saint book. And so I hope that people take the time to read it, or take the time to understand what it means to lead as an action and not be a leader, as a noun, right? Like trying to lead as a verb and, put people in positions for success, and then understanding what you can do to lead more like Jesus Christ.
Love it. And if people want to check out the book, obviously Amazon is the place, but or any other place you would send them if they want to learn more about you, your work, or the book?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon is just fine, or Cedar Fort Publishing and Media. You can also find the book or Deseret Books. Yeah, you can find it at any of those locations.
Love it. Very good. So what's the next book, Ernest?
I'm actually thinking about writing a book on the Aaronic priesthood, and then it's called Tap In to the Lord's Work. So Tap is teaching Aaronic priesthood principles. So it's something I was kind of inspired to do when I went to Helaman and Camp Moroni this past summer. Mm-hmm. So of a unique opportunity. Me and my boys were able to walk, Zion's camp. So for me, being of African-American descent, obviously that's not something that's always been offered to us. So it was a very unique opportunity for us to walk. For me to do it for the first time and to do it with my sons was pretty cool. And so I was really prompted, to write something like that for them, and to kind of share my testimony in that whole experience.
I love that. I think that'll be a great book, and we'll have to do another conversation when it comes to that. Yeah. So, really good. Well, definitely, hopefully people check out the book. Again, it's Leading in the Lord's Way, A Journey of Servant Leadership. Last question I have for you, Ernest, is as you reflect on your life and how you've led, how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
When I look to Christ as my example, or I learned that leading is always continuously evolving, right? And for me to kind of learn from my experiences, at the time when I was going through everything that I went through, I would have not thought it was I didn't think it was advantageous, right? I didn't think it was going to be for my benefit. But when I look back on it now, I understand that it developed me in a way where I can lead more effectively, where I can lead with empathy, or I can understand the perspective of someone who does not have certain things. And so for me, I think it's just understanding that whatever we go through in life, whether it be difficult or somewhat with ease, I know, and I think Eric can testify to it as well, that it developed us to be better men, and which helped us be better leaders within the home. And then we all looked at our struggles that way, knowing that God was preparing us for a great work, that he was preparing us to lead in his way, which is not from an organization. It's not from a place of authority. It's from a place of humble position where we learn from our experiences and take those experiences to help out other people, to share a message, and to help others find the covenant path.